I think with regards to Rashford and Bruno, there's no doubt at the moment that Manchester United fans are really, really frustrated with them and disappointed. Sometimes you'd whisper that and be worried what United fans might think, but I think in the main, everybody acknowledges that it's been really disappointing all season from Rashford. And Bruno's fell off a cliff as well. I think the difference between the two is that Bruno never stops running. Although he's not playing well, he doesn't stop running. Whereas with Rashford, he won't go in for a 50-50 very often. He won't track back, and the body language is really bad. They are two major issues in the sense that really going into the season, they would be your two most important players, and then neither of them are improving. I think they can both play better, and I wouldn't be making a decision on selling them at the moment because we've still got loads of the season left, and we need to use them, and we need them to play well because we don't have anybody else. And if they recover their form in the next 3 months, then things change. But what I would be looking at in the summer is they're almost light switch players now. You never know whether they're going to be on or off. And if you want to close the gap on a Man City or a Liverpool or an Arsenal, they don't have these players like Saka, Salah, Haaland. They're ridiculously consistent. And that's something Rashford struggles with. And Bruno seems to be struggling with it as well. So I think if they're to stay, you've got to swallow them up with better, more consistent players. Now, are they willing to be second best players because they've been the star players? So I definitely think there's a decision to be made in the summer because I don't really think we're ever going to find the consistency. I don't think you can win a Premier League title with Bruno and Rashford as the key players. I think they can become the side acts. I think they can be part of the team, but that's not what they've been at United. So you've got to have an honest conversation with them in the summer and say, look, if we're keeping you, you're probably going to have a reduced role in relation to the star status in the team. Can you deal with that? Or is it time to part ways for everybody? I think Antony's a really interesting one. I think most people have made their mind up on him. And where I would give the manager credit is that he did buy the player, but he's also dropped the player. And people forget that we've seen plenty of managers buy players. We saw it Arsenal with Pepe. We've seen Pep do it a few times with right backs and goalkeepers. He's doing it with Grealish at the moment, actually. And I know Grealish had a really good season in the treble season, but he's still £100 million player that Pep bought, and he's not labouring the point of picking him ahead of Doku. So I think the fact that Ten Hag's taken him out of the team is quite damning for Antony, but it's also a positive from Ten Hag that he's not just going to keep picking a player that he bought when he's not performing. Is there a way back? I mean, I still think there's a good player there, but I think the big problem we've probably got is he a good player in the Eredivisie and not a good player in the Premier League? And if that's the case, you've got to cut your losses. He has got time, like Rashford and Bruno. He has got 3 months, but I think if we hit the end of the season and we are where we are now, where he's just a little bit part player doing nothing, then you probably, after 2 years, have got to say, look, we're not going to be able to sell him, I don't think. I think he's going to have to be loaned with an option to buy the following summer, because he can't have another year like this where you've got kids starting ahead of him like Garnacho and even Forson at the weekend. And, he's probably on the pathway to being a flop. I don't think that's enough to, it's not breaking news. As I said, many players are bought and flop, but I think the next 3 months are key. And if it doesn't work out, then I would expect a loan deal somewhere and then, a slow exit from the club. I think when you're talking about Man United flops, there are so many. I'd have to get my encyclopedia out to see where I'd rank him. I think Alexis Sanchez will always be the biggest one for me because it was just ridiculous money, ridiculous hype, and ridiculous disappointment. I think with Antony, it's interesting because I don't actually blame him, Ten Hag, or the fans on this, if that makes sense, because we never should have paid that fee. It was like we paid that fee because we got desperate in the last couple of weeks, which was down to the recruitment team and the CEO and the director of football. I mean, we paid 80 million for a 50 million pound player, which automatically makes it slightly better. So, yeah, I think, but then that's a factor. How much we paid for a player that wasn't worth it will put him in. He's got to be in the top 5. I mean, I can think of 2 or 3 others, but I think if he does flop, he's got to be in the top 5 because we ridiculously overpaid, and that it's a ridiculous amount of money. He's never looked like a 40 million pound player in a Man United shirt, let alone 80. I think with Jadon Sancho, I'm really hoping that again, this next 3 months seems to be key for so many United players, and I really hoped that when he went to Dortmund, he would recapture the form in a league that's nowhere near as strong as the Premier League. Let's be honest. There's a lot of cannon fodder in that league where you can really get a load of assists and goals. And I thought that's what he would do. And I think that would, whilst that there would be a section of the fan base that go, yeah, let's bring him back because he's playing well in Dortmund. I think the majority would be, yes, there's a value there. Someone's going to go and buy him from us. This is the worst case scenario because there is an element of "I told you so" in the fan base, because they're like, look, he's a busted flush. He's not the player he thinks he is. Ten Hag was right. He isn't reliable. He isn't consistent. But we don't. It's the worst case scenario, because then he's on massive money. He's got a big contract. He comes back in the summer for the first day of training, and nobody wants to see those pictures of Sancho, Donny van der Beek rolling back for pre-season training because no one else wants to buy them. So it is concerning. He's not playing well in Dortmund at the moment, and therefore there's not going to be a big list of clubs wanting him, which means it's another big hit. I just hope he turns it. I mean, look, there's no doubt Sancho's a good player, but he's not the player we thought we were buying. He's got to look at himself for that. Obviously, I think he's made big mistakes over his time at United, and he made big mistakes at the start of this season, how he dealt with the situation. But he's been given a really good second chance at Dortmund, and I really expected him to kick on and, point to prove, back in familiar surroundings. We heard all that hype at the start. And I think the reality is that, again, you just can't switch it on and off. You can't not train for 3 months and then just drop into Dortmund and expect it to go well. But I'm hoping that it's just a slow burner, and by, sort of March, April, he will show some form, because he needs to move. He needs to move. He can't be coming back to Manchester United. I think he's burnt his bridges with too many United fans now. Whatever your issue is with Ten Hag, that's on you. But fans see it as a refusal to put the shirt on, and that's never a good look. If Man United go and sign Ross Barkley, I don't think that Sir Jim Ratcliffe's really running the football club. I think it's the Glazers, because that's exactly the sort of thing that Man United would do over the last 10 years. And Ross Barkley's been fantastic this season for Luton, but Pep Guardiola's not looking at him. Jurgen Klopp's obviously leaving anyway, but he wouldn't be looking at him. Mikel Arteta's not looking at him. I mean, Ross Barkley, again, if he leaves Luton, West Ham, that's the sort of, mid-table sort of club that he should be going to. Manchester United, I mean, look, he's not a defensive midfielder in my mind. He's an all-action midfielder. He's very good in the creative third, and we've done this so many times before. I mean, there's a big list, but the one that jumps to my mind is Eriksen. You bring a player in that's had a good Premier League career, who's nearly 30 or is 30. He might give you one good year, and then you've given him a 3-year contract, and he's burning out at 31, 32, or he's picking up injuries. So, no, I mean, look, I'm not against those type of signings, and it does fit certain clubs, but Manchester United are swamped with this sort of deal over the last 10 years, and we need to be looking at a different profile of player. We need to be looking at, hungry players who are between 20 and 25, who want to take the next step and become better players. And Ross Barkley, obviously, it's great renaissance. I always liked him in his early days as a young player at Everton, but it's not a deal that United will be looking at. The honest answer is I don't regret Man United selling Anthony Elanga, because I think we've seen this happen time and time again, where players are on the books of bigger clubs and they go to clubs like Nottingham Forest or others, and they really do thrive because they're good players who aren't good enough to play for the top teams. And I think that with regards to Anthony Elanga, it's like being a bigger fish in a small pond when you've been a small fish in the ocean, really. I mean, for example, I think if you put Marcus Rashford at Nottingham Forest, he would do really, really well, because the way they play, there's space to get in behind, and that suits Anthony Elanga. I think he had enough chances at Man United, really, and obviously Rangnick liked him a bit, but Ten Hag never really took to him as a long-term forward, and I don't think he's got that in his locker, if I'm being honest. But it's great when you see players that were formerly at your club doing really, really well, and Nottingham Forest is a really good fit for Elanga. I just hope that he's not the guy that when this goes out has scored a hat-trick and made me look stupid in the cup. But no, I think it was the right move for him. I think it's the right move for Manchester United, and it doesn't surprise me when players go off and do well elsewhere, because I imagine that for younger players who are at Man City or Manchester United or Arsenal, when you go to a club like that, there's so much that you take from your upbringing in a bigger club environment, and he's grasped the opportunity, definitely.